All right, we're ready to get going. Gonna wait a few minutes here for people to jump in. When you jump in, go ahead and put your name in there so I can see that you're here. Open it up a little. All right, all right, all right. My clock says it's 11 o'clock. So I am going to get started with our program today. When you come on in, comment so that I can see that you're here. Put in your comments, put in your name, where you're from. I'm excited that you're here today. Let's get started. Well, you know what? I'm going to give it about one more minute because if you're there, then I can tell you're here by putting in your name in the comment section. So let's get started. Okay. Give it one more minute here. All right, we're going to get started. If you're here, then let's do it. Susie, I see you sent me a text. There, Gabby, she's there. Yay. Hey, Gabby, thank you for coming in. Yes, I have my picture in the bottom of the screen because the thing that I really want you to be able to see is the pictures that I have here. All right, Cecilia from Orange County. We have Gabby, we have Cecilia, we have Alina. Hey, Alina, I'm so glad. Down in Texas now. Good to see you. Good to be connected with you again. Awesome sauce. I'm so happy that you all are here. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and get started. You know what? Your support means a lot. And this is my first time doing this, and I'm super excited. We have some important things to talk about today, so let's do it. I'm going to start with this quote by Napoleon Hill. Here's what he said: think twice before you speak and act, because your words and actions will plant seeds of success or failure in the minds of others. I thought that that was an appropriate quote to start with because we are talking about jumpstart your people skills to positively influence your team. And I want to share a couple things here with you about this subject. Um, there's a lot going on, right? Oh my goodness. We keep hearing about the great resignation. People have decided what they do and don't want in an organization, and they're willing to jump ship and get what they want. So we have a lot going on with that. And, fortunately, we're becoming much more aware of the importance of well being because we keep hearing a lot too that people are burnt out. So we want to make sure that as leaders, we positively influence our teams so that we can help them stay with us and feel good while they're with us. Hey, Mimi, I'm glad you're here from Marina Del Rey. Yay. So here's the thing. I was thinking, what can I do to impact people who are in my circle. So I decided to create this workshop. Jumpstart your people skills to positively influence your team. I want to start with the word people skills. People skills used to be considered soft skills, and I have to say I didn't like that so much because people skills are critical. Now, when I was having a conversation with a client, actually Michelle Bivens at Farmers and Merchants Bank, we were talking about this last week, and now the word has been replaced with soft is being replaced now with power. So people skills now are being considered as power skills. Doesn't that make so much more sense? I actually really love that. And a couple other things I want to call your attention to, and that is the word team. So, team typically, you might think of it at first as team is your direct reports, people who report to you, and maybe part of your team is your leadership team. So it's your colleagues and your peers. And the other thing that it might be is it might be your family. Have you thought about that? So as we're thinking about how we can positively influence our team, I want you to think of all that. Could be committees, people who you're working with on committees. So let's agree with that. And so we're going to talk about a lot today related to that. So key points, let me share with this too. There are a lot of things to talk about with people skills. I chose these 4: vision casting and sharing. There's power in asking questions, listening to show you care, and servanthood leadership. So these are the areas that I'm going to be covering today. And again, there are a lot. So let's start with the skill of vision casting and sharing. One thing that I learned from my mentor, John Maxwell, was this: leaders see more and before. And you see, this picture that I have here is of the ocean. It's vast, it's big, it goes way far out. And this is what leaders have to do. Leaders see more and before. And transparency matters. I know sometimes leaders grapple with how much should we tell them? What do we want them to know? I want to share with you and remind you that transparency does matter. I remember when I worked for a large corporation, and some of the leaders, we'd be in a meeting and we'd be discussing strategy and leaders and where we want to go. And when we would come out from that meeting, people would want to know, what'd you all talk about? What's going on? And so it's important for us to recognize and to put together a strategy with our team. What do we want to share? But you can't just not share anything. So transparency does matter. People want to know, where are we going? Are we going to be opening up new markets? Is there going to be a chance that we have some price increases? Are we going to launch some new products this year? So these are the kind of things that we want to be able to share. We can't keep it to ourselves. And who's going to be impacted, and how is this all going to work out? How are these new plans going to affect us? We want to remember that people want to know, what's in it for me, right? I remember too, this organization, we rolled out a huge project. We were launching a new CRM system, and there was a lot involved. And you know what? The project was not a smooth rollout because what the leaders neglected to remember was to communicate to everyone what was involved, who was going to be involved, what the time frame was, and what the impact was going to be on our current situation. So please remember that it's so important to remember what's in it for me. And then, we learned from Simon Sinek, the golden circle. Why? We have to always make sure we communicate our why. Why is this our vision? Why? And what's in it for me? Also, in vision casting and sharing, let's just say this: leadership requires courage, right? I mean, as a leader, you're courageous, and sometimes it's a little frustrating and you get kind of nervous because you don't have all the answers. But you have courage. And when you have courage, then you have the ability to be vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, then you have the ability to build trust and give other people permission to acknowledge that they don't have all the answers either. But together, we can get to where we want to go when we're together. So one tip is face reality as it is, not as you wish it were. Face reality as it is, not as you wish it were. So important. And also be candid with everyone. Now, that thing called the rumor mill. I remember being astounded with how fast that rumor mill would pass around. And I was always amazed how accurate that rumor mill was. And you know the truth about the rumor mill is it's negative energy. It stirs up negative energy. It stirs up a lot of anxiety, and it produces not very much. It reduces productivity, is what I'm trying to say. And so we want to stop the rumor mill. How do we do that? By being candid with people, because the rumor mill will start. I bet you've been a part of it, and we know that that is not creating a positive influence and impacting on our team, right? It's not at all. So we want to make sure we are aware of that. And then if you didn't learn anything in the last 2 years, you learned this. And I want to encourage you right now to pat yourself on the back. Obstacles create opportunity. And we had many obstacles. You know, we always have obstacles. That's called life. But we had even more obstacles there, and they continue to come. And so, what you have learned as a leader, and your ability to share your vision and capture vision, is how you're turning your obstacles into opportunities. So again, pat yourself on the back for that. Pat yourself on the back for that. Hey, Desiree, I'm glad you're here. Good to see you. All right. So now what I want to talk about now, another skill is asking questions. Now, you know, I have observed that people typically don't want to ask too many questions. So I want to encourage you to welcome a mindset of curiosity. I want you to welcome a mindset of curiosity, because when you're curious about something, it means, you know what, I'm trying to explore. I want to understand a little bit more. So people don't ask questions because they might say, I don't want to be nosy. I don't want to feel pushy. And I get that. So when we have a mindset that it's okay to ask because we're exploring and we're discovering, then we'll be more willing to ask questions. So sometimes as leaders, we're quick to tell. So we also want to stop telling so much and replace that with asking. And I'm going to go over a couple kind of questions right now. One is open-ended questions. And there are several kind of open-ended questions. And this first part is questions are about developing relationships and connections. So that's what this is about. Open-ended questions. And this becomes a habit. So, you know, it's the beginning of the year and we're saying we're going to have some new habits. I really want to encourage you to have asking open-ended questions as a habit. So an acronym that I created for ask is always seek knowledge. So we want to always seek knowledge. And when we keep that mindset, then we're not feeling as though we're being pushy or being nosy. So one really good open-ended question is what? So you might ask someone, what are you most excited about with working with this project? And then you'll listen and they'll tell you. And you know what? They might tell you something that sparks another question. They may say something like, you know what, I'm really excited to be working on this because I've never worked with that person and I've always wanted to. That might spark the question, oh, well, I wonder, what is it that you've been excited about working with that person? Then they'll give you more information. So sometimes we're guilty of just asking a question and we don't carry that conversation forward and we stop potential information that we could use to build relationships, build connection, and really get the ideas flowing. So what's a great question to ask? And another one is who? Who else do you think you might want to work with? Right? And then when do you think you might have that person hired? Right? Why do you think that is? Where do you see this taking us? And then another question is how do you think this will help us in the end? Right? So there are open-ended questions that we can ask, which really give you a lot more information than you normally would have. Here's a little tip too. When you are the person who's dialoguing and having a conversation with someone and you're in the process of exploring, you should be talking only 30% of the time. The other person should be talking 70% of the time. And the way that you make that happen is by asking those open-ended questions. And remember to continue those questions flowing. One question leads to another. Now, another kind of question is close-ended questions. And these have their purpose. They have their place. They are designed to help people get to the point, answer a question, yes or no. And they may sound like something like, do you understand what I need? That's a yes or no question, right? Are you clear on what we need to do next? Will you send me an update and let me know how things are going? So the close-ended questions are good, and they are designed for you to be able to get a specific answer and help the other person get to the point. And there's another situation where you want to ask questions, and this one's about solving problems. So, as a leader, you know how to solve the problems most of the time, right? You know how to solve the problems. You want to ask questions from the other person about how to solve the problem because you're hoping to develop them. And you always want to be open for new ideas and opportunities, right? So, some examples of questions to ask when you're in the problem solving mode. One is, why do we have this problem? Now, why do we have this problem is a really good place to start. You know what I want to share with you too, something that I meant to say before is when you're asking people questions to develop relationships, why tends to be the question to ask at the end? Because if you ask, well, why'd you do that? They might get defensive. But in this case, why do we have this problem? You're starting the acknowledgement that there is a situation going on that needs to be changed, and you're working toward building a solution. And so, how do we solve this problem is another great open ended question. How do we solve this problem? And now, so that's a general question. Now you're going to get to the action plan. What are the specific steps we can take to solve this problem? So we talked about why we have the problem, how we can solve it. We got the brainstorms, we have some options. What are the specific steps? And then how can we adjust our game plan? That's such a great question. By the way, these questions don't necessarily represent the order you ask them in. They're designed to give you some ideas about how to ask questions when you're trying to solve a problem and how to adjust our game plan. I love sports. I refer a lot to sports, and they have a lot of game plans, and they're constantly adjusting their game plan from one half to the other, from one quarter to the other. So how do we adjust our game plan? Great question. I love this next question. What are we missing? Now, this tends to come at the end of the meeting when you've had some good ideas generating and ideas are flowing. What are we missing? That's such a good question. Many times somebody will say, oh, you know what? We forgot about this. Or they might say, we've had a robust conversation here and I think we've covered it. At any rate, what that does is it helps open up the opportunity that maybe something was missed. And I don't know if you can see this last one because my picture might be blocking it, but I love this question. How can I make your life simpler? Woo! That is an amazing question. And when I started asking my team members that, they were taken aback. They were used to me saying, what do you need from me? What kind of help can I give you? But then when I changed it to how can I make your life simpler, they started to expect that question. And you know what? They started giving me a list. They love it. It shows that you really care about them, that you know what, you realize they're your people. You want to help them. You are using your people skills when you're doing this. So that is such a great question for you to ask. So we've talked about vision casting and vision sharing. We've talked about the skill of asking questions. We're going to move to the skill of listening now, the skill of listening. Now, be sure if you have any questions or comments, throw them in there and I'll be able to see them as we're going. And I hope that this is really helping. So the skill of listening. Now, we are familiar that there are very many barriers to listening. There's a lot of barriers. And there's reasons we don't listen. We know we should. And here's the question that I like to say. We know we should listen, but how well are we listening? So this is designed to help you become more aware of what might be stopping you. Then I'm going to give you some insights about how to become an even more effective listener. So the truth is you might be tired. I mean, you just might be tired, right? There's a lot going on. You might be overwhelmed and you just might not be, the second point, in the mood to listen. Maybe you just had a tough conversation with someone and then someone else comes, pings you on your Slack or calls you on the phone or sends you a text. There's so many ways to communicate nowadays. But you know what? You're just not in the mood. Here's another thing. Some people have a habit of interrupting, and it could be because you've heard that person over and over and over again saying the same thing. So you don't let them finish. You tend to interrupt. This is something that we want to make sure that we don't do so that we can be an effective listener. And another barrier is virtual fatigue. I hear people saying so much that they have Zoom fatigue. And I'm so excited you're here today on this because you know what? I know there's a lot going on, but Zoom fatigue is real. So let's talk about some requirements of effective listening, right? One is the mindset. The same way we had to have the mindset of curiosity to ask good questions, we need to have a mindset to be a good listener. And this little statement over here: when you consistently listen to others, you never suffer for ideas. So there are benefits to listening. So let's remember that. So we have to set our mindset right. And then there's the energy thing. Oh my goodness. Listening requires a lot of energy. It really requires so much energy. And so what you want to do is stand up, move around, breathe, right? Because there's a lot to it. And if you're sitting a lot, check your posture, sit up better, check your posture, because when you are feeling better and when you have the energy that you need, you're able to give that energy to the other person who you want to really listen to. And then last but not least is you want to listen with the intent to listen to understand. You really do want to listen to understand. So, some recommendations for listening. And I have here first eye contact. And you might be saying, duh, I know we need to have eye contact. I know. And it requires intentionality. You have to stop looking at your phone. You have to stop looking at your computer. You have to really look at that person and give them eye to eye contact. And speaking of virtual, on Zoom or on Teams or whatever it is you use the most, we want to be able to give eye contact. And sometimes you might be tired of looking at that little green button there on the computer with the camera. But even if you don't look right into the camera, look at the person. They can tell you're engaged, right? I really encourage cameras on because that's how people communicate. They can see how you're feeling, you can see how they're feeling, and that eye contact really makes a huge difference. And then I want to talk about actively listening. And I know you've heard this term, and so I just want to reiterate what it is because it is a way to positively influence our teams. Paraphrase is when, you know what, they say something to you, and then you feed back what you heard them say. I can't tell you how many times I feed it back to people and they'll say, no, that's not what I said. Or they might say, that's not what I meant. So it is really important to use the paraphrase. Here's an example. You may have someone, you probably have heard this before. I'm tired of working from home. I miss my people. And so a paraphrase sounds like, I hear you saying that you're really getting tired of working from home and you're missing your colleagues, you're missing your people, you're missing your team. And they'll say yes. And then, you know what's most likely to happen? They'll continue. They'll continue to tell you what's going on, why they're not feeling so good about working from home anymore. So it's about, again, relationships and building connection. And then confirm and clarify is very similar to that. Confirm and clarify would, you'd say something like, oh, it sounds like you're just really over working from home and you're missing your people. Is that right? And they'll say yes. And then again, they'll continue to talk. So what the value of this is for you to make sure that they know you heard them, and for you to make sure that you heard it right. And if you didn't hear it right, they'll tell you. So that power of paraphrasing and confirming and clarifying, huge, very goes a long way. And then last but not least is being empathetic. See, when you're empathetic, it means that you're paying attention to them and how they feel. You might be fine working from home. You might be fine with the virtual calls. You might be fine working from home, but you're not saying, oh, I don't know what's wrong with you. I love it. You're not saying that. What you're saying is what they said. So it's about them. So we really want to be mindful of being empathetic and caring about others and letting them see that we understand how they feel. I want to share with you that as you can, there's a lot to listening. It's a lot. Listening is a lot. And it has to be very intentional. There are 5 levels and 3 types of listening, and I want to run through these with you so that we'll understand. So pay attention to the column to the left because that's where we want to be. Empathetic listening. That is what's important. It's called receptive listening. We just talked about empathy, right? So empathetic listening. Now over to the right, remove listening. Let's just agree we don't do that, right? Ignoring and pretending is not good. And here's an example. When I do this training in person, I usually put people in role plays. And I remember one that stands out in particular. They went through the exercise and I asked people how they felt when they were in certain roles. And the one lady said, I was irked because they were pretending like they were listening and they were ignoring me. And you know, that's how people feel. If we're pretending to listen or we're ignoring them, they're feeling irked. And that is the opposite of positive influence in our team. So we want to make sure that we don't make people feel irked and ignore them and pretend. So the second type is responsive listening, and we're getting there with responsive listening. Selective listening is when we kind of come in and out, we tune in and out based on what people are talking about. So right now, for example, I love football, and this past weekend was the best weekend ever in football. So when someone's talking about football, I'm all ears. But if they start talking about golf, I'm tuning out. So selective listening, you're in, but you're out. You're not completely present. Attentive listening, we're getting there. That's an indicator of active listening, where you're doing your active listening, you're paraphrasing, and you're doing a good job. But the ultimate is the empathetic listener. The empathetic listener does four things. They show people that they're heard. They show people that they're understood. They show people that they accept them. And they show people that they feel them. So what our goal is to be an empathetic listener and let them know that we feel them. And the last skill that I want to talk about today is the skill of servanthood. For me, Martin Jr. represents an amazing servant leader. And so I chose to put his picture, and this is January, the month that we celebrate his birthday. Put people first and lead them with your heart. Put people first. This does not mean that meeting deadlines is not important. This does not mean that the project's not important. This does not mean that you don't care about the productivity. It does mean that when you put people first, they are more likely to finish the project on time and to meet the deadline. They feel like they're valued and they know that they're cared for. So putting people first and leading with your heart is crucial. And one thing you want to do is acknowledge and maximize their strengths, right? I see people focus too much on people's weaknesses. And what we want to do is focus on their strengths. And by the way, when you're sharing the vision, you can incorporate their strengths and how they can contribute to the vision that you see. So focus on the strengths and how to help them stronger. And also practice kindness. And we know what that means. Random acts of kindness. I mean, it's things like the handwritten note, the saying the words that people love hearing the most, which is thank you. So practice kindness. And I want to give you an example too of practicing kindness. And we all know the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated. And I want to share with you that even better than that is the platinum rule, which is treat people the way they want to be treated. And an example I have of that is recognition. Some people love public recognition. They want to be recognized for their team and they love the public recognition. However, others do not want to be recognized in public. They get embarrassed, they're shy, they don't want it. They feel like people are bragging about them. It makes them feel very uncomfortable. So the more we know people and develop relationships and build our connections, the more we can treat people the way they want to be treated. The platinum rule. The quotes I have here, I want to call your attention to by Mother Teresa, an ultimate servant as well. We can never know how much good a single smile can do. And then Rick Warren, the most essential quality of leadership is not perfection, but credibility. People must be able to trust you. And that's from Rick Warren, our pastor in our backyard here. Another important skill of servanthood is people development. Leaders develop leaders. That's our job as leaders, is to build leaders. So I want to quickly run through some of these traits that you want to be on the lookout for as you're working to help your people. But people have said, I want to know how to be promoted. I want to know what I need to do. So here we go. This is how we serve them. As you're looking at this, you all are leaders and you have these skills, I'm sure. And so take a look at what you have, and then you can start to look at what other people have that you are trying to help advance. Catalysts, they make things happen. You want to look for people who make things happen because you want to keep them in your organization. Influencers obviously influence others. Who are they influencing? Not only people in their department, on their team, but they might be very influential in the community. There are probably other departments that they're influencing. So influencers are very important. Relationship builders. Yes, you can be a leader without building relationships. But to be an excellent leader, you have to be able to know how to build relationship and sustain those relationships. The next one is gatherers. And what does that mean? People are attracted to gatherers. They're gathered people, people who are willing to walk beside them and follow them. So people who are magnetic, in other words. And then value adders. These are the givers. They want to roll up their sleeves and say, well, you know what can I do to help, right? These are the people who I say do the and then some, right? They do the extra. And then the next one, which I don't know if you can see that because my picture might be hiding it, but it's the opportunists, right? The opportunists. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Opportunists take advantage of the opportunity and they take risks. And that's what leaders do, right? And then the last one here is finishers. They follow through. You want people who not only follow up, but also follow through. So those are all the slides that I have on the. Do we have any questions? I'm at the point now where I've got looks like 2 minutes for some questions or thoughts. I haven't seen any come in. So I'm going to go to the last slide here. And again, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I had the courage. You supported me by coming to listen to what I wanted to share with you today. I really hope that the topic "Jumpstart Your People Skills to Positively Influence Your Team" has given you a few tools and guidelines and nuggets to take with you and pass on to other people in your network. I plan to do this at least once a month, so I'll keep you posted about it. I would love to hear how I can continue to serve you. Speaking of servanthood, I want to serve you. So please let me know how I can serve you. And I'll get in touch with you if you don't mind and just kind of check in with you. But I want to close with this quote. This comes from Kim Blanchard. He said, "The key to successful leadership today is influence, not authority." And as my mentor, John Maxwell, says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Thank you so much. All right. All right. Elena, okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Those questions you listed are with, oh man. Oh, look at that. I love that. Show that. We'll change. Oh, Mimi, aren't you just so kind? Oh, Elena. Oh, thank you so much. I love it. So I just want to thank you. I'm going to be mindful and respectful of your time. So I said 30 minutes, so it's 11:30. Again, thank you so much. And I just wish you the best. I always want to tell people to make today matter. And I'll be in touch with you. Thank you so much. And feel free to reach out to me too if I can answer any other questions. Thank you so much. All right, Cecilia. Thank you. All right.